Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the 29th video in our Master Series and the 16th video in our editing phase, I do believe. And this is the third video in our flow processing and flow editing and the final video in our flow editing. Let's get right into some detailed flow editing. First of all, just remember we use all these tools and concepts we talked about previously, and you're probably going to use all of them if you're doing a really good job. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on what you have to work on. Now, one of the biggest things you want to keep in mind is that your performance probably has dynamics in it already. Meaning this is louder than this is louder than this, and louder than that down there. And so as you're doing this, that you got to pay really close attention. Now let's say this is a short phrase and I get done with it and I go start working on this phrase and I realize that I've turned this up way too loud in comparison to this phrase over here, and because the dynamics are supposed to be rising up like that, and I'm kind of getting it too loud. You can always go through there and highlight all those and go, okay, I need to adjust this phrase a little bit as a whole. Instead of just, I've got the phrase, all the work done on it, but, I'm just going to highlight the whole thing, and that should take, and adjust it. It shouldn't affect any of the work that we're getting ready to do, and it shouldn't affect your automation, because if I had like automation on here that went like this, and I was over here adjusting this like this and highlighted that and brought that down or up or down or wherever, that it shouldn't affected the automation, any automation work that I've done. So just keep that in mind, and don't worry about it too much, because you more than likely will be doing some of that, adjusting each phrase and in how it correlates to the measure, or I should say to like the chorus or the verse, and then that in comparison to the dynamics of the next chorus or verse or whatever's happening, that you might have to adjust them at a whole, to work on the dynamics of the overall performance. So just keep that in mind. So first of all, let's say that this could be anywhere in the production, in the middle of the production, anywhere, but you're going to have a beginning and an end of what is having a problem. So we're going to just say this is the very beginning of this. So the first thing is I've cut where I wasn't worried too much, because I knew I'm going to have to do some compression and stuff. So I just made some cuts about where I think the issue is. Now, we talked about you can either drag audio around, or in my dock, option command, and you can actually slip the audio like that. And so I'm going to slip that into the time that we're beginning of it. All right, now I'm just worried about where it starts. That's where it starts, and that's why, I might want it a little bit different. I might decide that I want it, farther up this way or a little bit back, but I want hit right where I want it. So the next thing is, and we're talking about this cut, I'm obviously having a problem with this, because I need this to be right here. So obviously this right here, this waveform start stopping about there, and I'm listening to it, and it's about there. I've looped it and listened to it a few times, and I've used my scrub tool. You can put a scrub tool on there and listen, to a little part to hear what's going on, and it's about there is the problem. So I put on. You normally have tools in your DAW for doing quantization and work like this. This is in my DAW that it's called Audio Bend, and this is a bend tool. So I'm going to go back over here. I want one marker at the beginning of this where I set it so it doesn't drag any audio from around there, and it doesn't drag the whole piece of audio back. Then I want it to be about there, so I don't want this audio pushing this audio around. When I try to stretch this out, it'll push this down. They're not connected because I made a cut, but it'll still move this audio around when I start stretching and compressing. So you want to make sure you put one on the front and one on the back of wherever you put one of these to stretch and compress audio. So then I'm going down and I'm going, okay, well, I've looped it and listened to it, and it's right there. I've tried to get as close as I can to zero crossing to make sure that if I can, that I'm going to find a place like right there. That's where that should be, right at zero crossing. So I'll remove this, remove that one, and I want that right there. So that's where I want my mark at. So I need to stretch this out over here. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to grab a hold of this, stretch that out to that mark there, and I'm basically good to go. I'm going to go down there and zoom in a little bit, make sure I'm pretty close to that, as close to that mark as possible. And whoops, I was off because it's over here. And make sure I'm as close to that mark as possible, and then zoom back out. Now, I've stretched that, so I'm going to loop this, make sure I'm not causing audio artifacts from stretching it that much, and you just kind of want to check it. So basically, once I'm done with that part, I'm going to take off this eye that makes you be able to see the audio that way. Take a look at it. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to cut right at that mark, basically. And the piece of audio on the other side of it here, I'm going to delete that. So I basically got that first part set in time exactly where I want it. So at that point, I'm going to move this piece of audio out of the way a little bit and bring this piece of audio in here because there's obviously an issue where that was landing. So the problem is, now I'm going to take this piece of audio, scoot that back a little bit, take this here, and I'm going to do the same thing again. The first thing, I'm going to loop it and listen to it, make sure I'm hearing where it's hitting, and then I basically want to go in there and do the same thing again. Now I'm going to put a marker here somewhere because I don't want it stretching this audio from over here. And I'm also making sure there is a marker over here somewhere so it doesn't mess with this audio here when I'm stretching and compressing. Now I'm going to remove this marker, I'm going to remove this marker, and I'm going to go in there and see about where that is. And if I know that's where that was ending, because that's where it was on the first one, so I'm trying to get as close to zero crossing as possible, and then I want to drag that audio. So I'm compressing that audio basically. It looks like it's stretching from over here, but basically I'm compressing it back that way. And so you can see what's happening there. Now this is going to need some work also, but I'm basically seeing that that's, and I've looped it and listened to it, and that's about where I want it. So basically the next thing is to take this eye off again. I want to come back down to where that marker is, and I'm seeing it's right there, so I want to cut right there, and then I want to back out of it, and I want to delete this audio that was at the front of it. Now that should be set right on there. So then I'm going to drag this piece of audio, make sure that's as close as together as possible without overlapping or doing anything like that to get that set as close to possible to that mark. Now that, you should be able to bounce that together and it not cause an audio problem. So you want to get down there and really make sure it's right on that mark as close as possible. Try not to get overlaps. It's better to be just a little bit away from each other than overlaps. And you might have to fuss with your, your fades and stuff, put a little bit of fade on it or something like that on either one of them to get it to where it's not getting a click or a pop or something like that. And basically that's done. Now you have to go to the end piece of this audio and do exactly what we did over here and adjust it and listen to it and loop it and test it and things like that. But it's just basically once, leapfrogging, or just jumping from one stone to the next, and doing just that until you've got it done where you want it. And it's pretty a simple concept. It's sometimes a little time consuming, but it can make all the difference in the world in your production. Now, once you get done with that, you basically want to go through and you want to hear dynamic differences, keeping in mind that, there's already dynamics in this phrase. We're going to pretend this part of this is a phrase that you don't want to ruin the dynamics. I mean, you can't turn this up real loud because you've got dynamics rising up in this performance already. So, I might come in here and I go, I want that down a little bit. This right here, the way that phrase is going, that's a little louder. And this over here, I'm going to bring that up a little bit. And then I loop and listen to it. Da, da, da. Whatever's going on there, sla, da. Whatever's happening, the dynamics of it sound good. It sounds nice and flowing. The timing's great. Sa, da, da. Whatever's going on. And that's basically, I've adjusted it fairly well. Now, sometimes you might go in there with your automation and go, well, also that, like, let's say this is a little bit of sibilance, and I've put some marks at the beginnings and the ends of these things where I was doing some work anyway, and, because now I'm going to fine tune some of that. So I might go through there and make some marks there and go, well, yeah, but at the end of this, that basically there's sibilance there, but I've already attenuated it. But at the end of it, I want it to rise up a little bit, or at the beginning of anything, whenever pronunciations are happening, sometimes in the middle of something, it'll die off. When the guy started out, yeah, and he backed off a little bit or some dang thing, and it's like at the end of it, I need to turn that up. I got to have a slope going on there because otherwise it sounds horrible. And then when he came back into this next part of the pronunciation or word, that it was fine, but before it, it didn't. I had to adjust it. And you can go through there and make adjustments with your automation. and sometimes smooth audio. These are very fast changes, in this small amount of time, but sometimes just making them a little bit smoother so they're not so abrupt can make it sound a little bit more natural. And you can go through and do all kinds of automation work in here. Sometimes you got a swell going on here, so you want that to automate that up a little bit because you did your cutting and you adjusted this area and this area and this area, but then about where you pretty much want them, and then you go do fine tuning with your automation, and I might want a little bit one right there. Or no, I'm going to take and I'm going to, put a curve on that a little bit there. And also here, I want a little bit of curve coming onto that one, as it's automating up into that, and that sounds better. I mean, I cut that there, but I couldn't really automate the exact way I wanted to hear that. Now I've got that, and it's, yeah, well, all right, cool deal. And you can do some seriously fine tuning of, very small pieces of audio with automation. You just got to be real careful about clicks and pops. Fast automation moves in very short period of time can sometimes cause clicks and pops and things like that. So you want to just keep looping it and listening to it and seeing if you're making it and doing it better and A/B it back and forth between the other track that hasn't had any work done on it to really see if you've done a good job. And basically you're done. Don't bounce this together yet. Wait until you get done with the whole performance, and you might have to do some adjusting by the time you get to the end and you come back and check it. But that basically takes care of flow editing and some of the things you'll be dealing with. And just, listen to it and make sure you're doing a good job to make sure it sounds as good of a performance as possible, and you're trying to make it sound even better. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed these videos on flow editing, and I will see you in the next video when we wrap up the editing series.